resources and fund my basketball teams, only to find out my council had no money. They were in so much debt, they couldn't even think about funding anything else outside of their debt and their program. So it was kind of awakening to me to figure out not only what my own band was going through, but what many bands go through all across Canada.
So you had to dig the band out of that debt?
Yeah, I was a counselor at the time. It was my chief and council at the time. That was their priority, digging out of debt, as well as trying to chart out a new future.
And how did you do that?
Well, we had a chief counselor that was economic development oriented, but also had an idea that we should utilize the Haida court case of 2004, meaning the Crown's duty to consult and accommodate First Nations on their rights and title. And so we developed that over the years and developed relationships with the federal government, provincial government, at a time when nobody understood what that meant.
And when did you become the chief counselor?
2011.
Okay.
And then got acclaimed in 2013.
Because that was the exact time that that consortium was putting together the LNG Canada plant.
That's right.
And this is really like an absolutely monstrous economic project. It included the Coastal GasLink pipeline from Alberta all the way to Kitimat, and then this enormous liquefaction plant, which I think we visited together about 2 years ago or so, that liquefies and then will eventually ship off gas to Asia and allow us to arbitrage the difference between the North American price for gas, which I think is it's around $3 per million metric British thermal units in Canada, but I think it's something like $12 in Asia. So basically it's 4 times higher in Asia than it is here. You could buy something for $3 and sell it for $12 and do that billions of times. You make a lot of money pretty quick, don't you?
Well, who's got the better deal in that equation, right? It's not us. But that was one of the motivating factors behind us, not just to lift our people out of poverty, which we accomplished, but also looking at the global issues around emissions for Asia, Africa, Europe, United States. And that was always our belief that not only are we doing this for the region, we're doing it for the globe.
Right. Well, the Fraser Institute was out with a report just the other day showing that if Canada were to double its natural gas production and send all of the excess to China and India, by displacing dirtier coal, it would actually reduce emissions by about 89% of the total emissions of all of Canada.
Yes.
And something like 600 million tons of emissions would be avoided by displacing dirty coal with clean Canadian gas. LNG Canada is the starting point for that. You've got another project, I think it's called Cedar.
Cedar, that was an agreement that we negotiated with LNG Canada to utilize capacity on their existing pipeline, the Coastal GasLink.
Okay.
So we could build our own.
So you're going to have yet another liquefaction plant for
yes,
that?
a floating, but it'll be under the pipeline capacity.
So it'll actually float. It'll float on the...
It'll be floating.
Where will that be? Is it in Kitimat as well?
In Kitimat, at the head of Douglas Channel, just below LNG Canada.
Okay.
And it was land that we acquired almost like 9 years ago. We purchased it, and we kept it in fee simple status because we thought business like certainty. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel with environmental laws or taxation laws. Let's just utilize what's in place for Canada and BC already. Industry loved that. They came in. Yes, we love that idea.
Amazing. And so this floating contraption will receive the gas, compress and cool it, turn it into a liquid. A big tanker will come along. That tanker will be injected with the gas. It'll be filled up and then shipped off to Asia.
Exactly.
Okay. And what is this, like you grew up in Kitimat. It must be a hell of a lot different now than when you were a kid.
Oh, night and day. Night and day, especially as an elected leader. Because early on in my elected career as a councillor, I realized, number one, we had no money. Number two, we were restricted by the Indian Act. And I was raised by 2 parents that went to residential school. They were sent by their parents. But I was always taught to be independent, not to ask for any help. So when I realized part of my job was to go to Ottawa to ask for money, I refused. But I did need something to get our people employed, get them out of poverty, and to get our council closer to being an independent government working model. And everything I saw up to date had failed. And so I was trying to think, what do I do next? So economic development in a roundabout way came to be the answer. And it's succeeded in so many different ways I never imagined. I mean, the people determining their own future, the council determining their own future, and the Indian Act becoming less and less relevant. It's just beyond my wildest dreams.
And can we replicate it in other places? Yeah. How do we do that?
Well, when I go to talk to First Nations, I talk to them and tell them, you got to know what you want. You have to know what you want. And ultimately, if you do want independence, you do want a future for your kids and your grandkids, you're going to have to embrace change. And change is not easy. And for that, you're going to have to elect the leadership or select your leadership that can reflect what you really want. It's not easy. It wasn't easy for us. I mean, we started in 2004 with this idea. And it was very painful to get to the point where we are today, and nobody really remembers those days. But it was worth it to see the younger generation not knowing or caring about the Indian Act.
Right.
Not knowing what it's like to be on welfare, like I know how, or what it's like to collect unemployment insurance annually, like I know how. It's a completely different world. And I've always said that if my kids and my grandkids don't know anything about the Indian Act or don't know anything about poverty or welfare, then my generation did their job well.
Right.
They should be addressing different issues in their lifetime.
So you're basically breaking the control and bureaucracy that held the community down. The control from Ottawa, I mean to say.
Yes.
That held the community down for so long. Now you're breaking that and replacing it with an independence that comes from resource development, jobs, opportunity.
Without a doubt. And it branches out from there. I'm talking to so many different leaders now. And Billy Moran,
yes,
your other MP,
yeah,
they've advanced so far. They've gone beyond what we've done.
They're on Enoch. I mean, he was the chief there. He inherited a huge debt and a high unemployment rate, and he balanced the budget. He paid down a bunch of the debt, and he got the unemployment down to almost nothing.
Yeah.
So those are the stories we want to replicate. He's serving now as a Conservative member of Parliament near Edmonton and our shadow minister for Indigenous issues. And that's our agenda, is to unlock real economic opportunity. My view is that First Nations people can be the richest in the entire world because the resources we have are literally boundless. I mean, we can't even begin to produce them all. Even if we were operating on full throttle with the government out of the way and the perfect policies and the best business, we have so many resources we could never produce them all. We would never run out. And First Nations people can be among the biggest beneficiaries, if not the biggest. And so we can replicate the story you had over and over and over again.
And you know, it's probably the best form of reconciliation I've ever seen, especially when people use terms like economic reconciliation. When you're not only you're closing the gap in terms of standard of living between First Nations and non-First Nations, but if you come to Kitimat, you'll see everybody succeeded. Non-First Nations and First Nations alike, even First Nations from different territories came in, took part. There was enough to go around. And so it uplifted everybody. And I always thought that reconciliation, that is a definition of reconciliation where there's no winners and losers. Everybody benefits, including the province, including the country.
I gotta tell you, it was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.